All right. Yes, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a proud privilege for me to be part of this second international conference or e-conference organized by OP Jindal University of Global South Department. And I would like to thank Professor Heba and the management of the OP Jindal for inviting me. I was part of this conference last year as well, and a few other occasions I was also interacted with the OP Jindal students and the staff members from time to time. Well, I listened to some of my colleagues, and I also thank the fellow speakers from different corners of the globe, Professor Mohan Kumar and Professor Tara, and other colleagues from other countries as well, and the participants from India, from other parts of the world as well. Well, the topic that the conference organizers have chosen today is very pertinent, and we almost forgotten the global south, and we need to resurrect and we need to put all our efforts together, particularly the scholars who are living and working and citizens of this global south countries. We need to, it is our duty, fundamental duty. We must make this movement alive and up and running. So that's very important, and that's why I congratulate the conference organizers to choose this particular topic, rising of global south, and maybe particularly during this new economic world order and during the pandemic and so on. Just to give you in the interest of time, I just would like to give you a snapshot view. I was listening to Professor Mohan Kumar, and Mohan Kumar said that we do have issues in South countries, particularly with regard to the pandemic. And then in North countries, they are better off. I just would like to mention that I disagree with that because of the fact that statistics and the reality, ground reality. I've been living in Africa for more than 22, 23 years. So I know Africa, what is happening. And I did a lot of research in this continent as well. So the point of the matter is that, ladies and gentlemen, as of today, we look at the statistics, global statistics. The infections of the pandemic is about close to 390 million, and about 5.7, 5.8 million people got killed by the virus. Then among those, the number one country is America, which is close to 80 million people in America alone got infected. About 900,000 people, close to 1 million people in America died with the virus. Now the list goes on. India is the second country with about 46 millions, and about 500,000, half a million people got killed in India as well. Then we have the other countries like France, about 20, Brazil is there and France is there with 20 millions. If you look at the point of French example, now, French population is by and large is equal to the same size of South African population. We got about 60 million population in South Africa and about 62 million population in France. Now, for every 3 people living in France, 1 got infected by corona in France alone. That one has to think about. You come to African continent, where we got about 1.37 billion people. That is almost equal to the same size of Indian population. So Indian population is getting close to 1.4 billions very soon. And whereas African population is also very much close to that figure. So 1.37 is absolutely close by. Now look at the African continent infection rates. And I mean, Allah and God, Bhagwan, everything is watching and what is happening with this pandemic politics. And then African continent, which we got about 55 countries in the continent, where we always considered as the most backward continent in the world. And whenever we talk about the World Bank statistics and in any other definition of defining the countries, low-income countries and probably low-middle income countries or upper middle income countries and higher income countries. So if we look at the current definition, which says up to $1,045. So if a country has got a per capita income of 1,045 and below, that is a low income country. And India is part of that. Sorry, India is not part of it, but the many African countries are part of it. Go to Burundi, go to Malawi, go to South Sudan, go to probably Somalia and Eritrea, Ethiopia, and all other countries, they all fall under the low-income country category, even in this 21st century. So that is one thing. And so starting from 1,046 up to 4,095, that is the low middle income countries. That is the big economies and categories that let's say about $4,096 up to $12,695. So that is the third category. Where South Africa, there are few countries in Africa, maybe 5 or 6 countries in Africa. They join that particular group, and that is popularly known as the upper middle income country group. Now, the point of the matter is that the countries, those who got more than $12,696, and they are the higher income countries or the rich countries or the north countries, we name it with different kind of concepts. Now, challenge here is that I was trying to mention the point. In the whole of African continent, the infection rates is little more than 10 millions. So you go to UK, which is up almost close to 20 millions in UK, 26 million in Brazil, and maybe France has indicated 20 millions, and Russia also it has got. So continent of Africa has got lower infection rates. So this is with regard to the immune power, with regard to so many other things that African people are able to face this kind of pandemic situation. So that is one point I would like to make it here. And if you look at the African continent, the investments that have been made on the ventilators, for instance, just to buy the ventilator, it costs about $50,000 to $52,000. And America, being the richest country in the world with about 25% of the total income of the world, that is the annual contribution of America to the global income. America doesn't have sufficient ventilators, and surprisingly, or probably obviously, African continent doesn't have ventilators. Go to Somalia, they don't even have a single ventilator. Central African Republic, for instance, it has got only 3 ventilators. Nigeria, being the largest populated country in African continent with about 220 millions, they got only less than 100 ventilators. So South Sudan, for instance, which is a newly born baby and which has got independence only around maybe 10 years ago or so. And then that country has got probably about 5 vice presidents who are working in the country. But whereas the number of ventilators that they have is only 4 ventilators. So the number of vice presidents are more than the ventilators actually. So we need to think about that. Now, nonetheless, what I would like to mention here is that this in African continent is even lesser than Mumbai as a probably, or Maharashtra as a province of India, where the number of infections apparently a bit higher than the African continent in general. So that is the point I would like to mention. And of course, South Africa stands #1 in African continent, just like America. And then we have close to 3.7 billion people infected in South Africa alone, and close to 100,000 people, about 95, 96,000 people died with the virus. So this is about the global pandemic, and Morocco stands, and Egypt also there, maybe Ethiopia. These are the top 10 countries in African continent where the infections are a little bit higher. But nonetheless, if you compare with the global statistics and with any country in Europe or probably other part of the world, the infections in African continent found to be lower and lesser. And the pandemic, in my view, ladies and gentlemen, is that it cannot be called as a pandemic. I don't know, maybe WHO has to revisit the definition of the pandemic and probably make it clear. Because in my view, if we look at the Spanish flu that was occurred more than 100 years ago, and we got a Spanish flu, which has infected about 500 million people across the globe. And out of that, about 50 million people died with the virus. So meaning that 10% is the killing rate. Now, if we go back to a plague disease, which is popularly known as Black Death. That was occurred sometime between 1346 to 1352. And that time, the overall population of the world is not even 450 millions. That is the global population we're talking about. Now, global population 450 million, almost about 40% of the population got killed. That means about 180 to 200 million people got killed by the Black Death, which is a plague disease about 700 years ago. So that is a kind of pandemic. Now look at this pandemic here. We got infection rate of close to 390 million people, whereas we got only killing rate of about 5.7, 5.8 million people. Just calculate. We are not mathematicians here. We calculate. It is found to be less than 1%. So there are some countries, maybe in America, out of 331 million people living there, the number of is close to 80 million. So that is one thing, an exceptional scenario. And the killing rate is also, even if you calculate 80 millions with about 900,000 people died, still it's not a pandemic. So that is my viewpoint, because at least Ebola disease, if everybody got infected by Ebola, about 14 to 15% people died with that Ebola. It is deadly, and that can be called as pandemic. So that is one of my viewpoint I would like to express. The other point here is that global south is whether we are emerging or whether we are rising or not. So I just would like to touch upon a few points. If we look at the history of the non-aligned movements, maybe starting from 1955, Bandung Conference was taking place in Indonesia. I was there in Bandung maybe about 5 years ago. And then if you look at the global leaders like Jawaharlal Nehru and maybe Joseph Tito from Yugoslavia, and also probably Abdul Nasser from Egypt, and Nkrumah from Ghana. And these are the people, these are the leaders, global leaders. They came together. They would like to, make a movement that is a non-aligned movement, which is basically developing countries movement, or maybe South countries movement, or third world countries movement. But what is happening? We always see only one thing, that United Nations conference is held on this and this date, or probably G7 conference or G8 conference is held this and this date. But we don't hear much about non-aligned movement actually. Although the leaders are gone for good, but thereafter, the current leaders who are sitting in country like China, for instance, or India, maybe Brazil or the BRICS nations, they must work harder to make this global South movement alive. And they must make it, although we have a BRICS nations, there are only 5 countries. South Africa is the only one country from African continent, which is a member of that. But now what is happening? BRICS is also probably more than 10 years old organization, but we couldn't able to win over the G7, G8 countries. There are only 7 or 8 countries. So we are basically building the probably walls instead of connecting, or instead of bridging instead of building the bridges to connect with each other. So the cooperation that we see among the developed countries is much higher, much transparent, much better than the cooperation that we have, or the trust that we have within our developing countries. So this concept has to be changed. Now, just look at the vaccine politics recently. I mean, many countries like Australia, or probably about European countries, majority of them, they got about 70 to 80% vaccination, whereas in African continent, we don't even have 5% vaccination. I mean, country like India came forward to give the vaccines for free, stating that, we believe in Indian philosophy, we believe that it is Vasudaika Kutumbam, for example. Vasudaika Kutumbam means the whole world population that we are living on this planet today, 7.9 billion people. We are all connected with each other one way or the other. So without you, I am not existing. Without me, you are not existing. So we always should support each other, collaborate with each other, cooperate with each other, and work together hand in hand to achieve the global objectives. No matter we are Indians, Egyptians, or Yugoslavians, or probably Russians and maybe South Africans, but we are human beings, first of all. So that concept is missing actually. So the global leaders, now India probably might have given for free for many countries in Africa, in Africa and Caribbean and Asia and other countries, which are developing countries. So India take a lead in giving COVAX and Covaxin and probably all those vaccinations. But the point of the matter remains, the problem is that India alone cannot achieve. China, India, they should work together because they are largely populated countries. They're also large economies in the world. China is the second largest economy, which can be a first largest economy very soon. And India is the fifth largest economy, which will be the first largely populated country in the whole world very soon. So these two countries, irrespective of whatever the differences that they have, border disputes and whatever the differences that they have, they should solve, they should work for the global South cooperation movement. So that is what is important. That is what the world is looking at. We do have 75% of the countries in the world, they are still third world countries. Only 25% of the countries in the world, they are developed countries. So we need to completely, change this picture. And without the other challenge, what is happening is that, ladies and gentlemen, if you look at the politics, the developing countries people, they are trying to promote the poverty in the world, and it is a good governed poverty in the developing countries. Whereas in the other side, in the developed world, which we call north countries, badly governed wealth. So badly governed wealth one side and good governed poverty on the other side. Both of them are detrimental to the world economy and world development, actually. So with these few words, in the interest of time, I'd like to conclude probably saying thanks to the conference organizers and probably if there are any questions or any kind of, probably detailed discussions, you're welcome to. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Rena, for sharing this